So I really like this signing by the New York Giants to go ahead and pick up cornerback James Bradberry, who was really just a great corner in Carolina, especially last year. He was fantastic. As we all know, some guys tend to have career years and contract years, but he was really good last year. And, he's been a really good player for a while going up against all of those big, talented receivers in the NFC South. I mean, 6 games a year, he's having to face either Julio Jones, Michael Thomas, or Mike Evans. Those are some big time matchups, and he's more often than not held his own at least, and oftentimes even done better than that. Despite the fact that he has had to go up against some just fantastic talent. He also played Seattle this year, Tennessee, San Francisco, Houston, LA. I mean, he played a ton of great teams this year, and yet, despite all of that, his passer rating that he gave up was just 77.9. So, this is a really talented player. He also had 3 interceptions, just gave up 2 touchdowns, 9 pass defenses. I mean, in terms of just great, stats, without a doubt, the numbers speak for themselves. 3 years, $45 million is good money for a corner, but if you're going to give that to a corner, give it to Bradberry, who's just 26 and is definitely a very talented guy and should help the New York Giants out a lot as they look to improve from last year where, they had some promising moments, but as a whole, didn't do that well. So let's just get into what I like about him. This play's a fun play more than anything, but what's going to happen is that it's going to be a cover 3 zone that Carolina is currently in, and for the Rams, they're going to have the receivers run those routes right there. And so, okay, there's several routes that are interesting, but really don't even worry about where the routes are going and worry more about where the routes aren't going. If you look at James Bradberry's zone right there, nobody is going to get into his zone. So he has no real assignment here, but watch what happens right when the ball is snapped. Carolina gives up containment, which allows Goff to get to the top half of the screen, but now, if you look at Goff, yes, he has room to run. Bradberry is realizing this. And again, keep in mind, he doesn't have to worry about any LA player because there's nobody else in that area since he realized nobody went into his zone. So now he knows he can do whatever he wants and there won't be any consequences. Because of this, he realized what was going on, was able to run over, and he actually was able to make a very quick tackle on that one. And that's just a smart play. It's just good situational awareness, just intelligent football play. And, having a smart corner who knows what to do in those situations, especially if you do play a lot of zone coverage like Carolina absolutely did last year, it really has some great benefits. This one's another interesting one where it's going to be, again, a cover 3 zone, and that's going to be the route that a Rams receiver is going to be running. But this time for Bradberry, he's in charge of covering the zone that is deep as opposed to the one that is shallow. So, he's in charge of covering the zone that route is going to end up being in. And so, right when the ball is snapped, you notice that LA player kind of fakes as though maybe he's going up towards the middle. And Bradberry, admittedly, isn't in perfect position right now. Actually, he's in a bit of a pickle. I mean, for one thing, this is a tough situation just because they ran play action, which now brought the linebackers further in, which now means that there is going to be more separation underneath. So Bradberry has to be a little bit wary of something like that happening. But as we know, this route is going to go towards the sideline, which now means that because that's the way the route is going, once that receiver cuts in that direction, Bradberry is facing the other way, so this could be a problem. So this now means that, once that receiver does cut up to top out of the screen, Bradberry is going to have to turn his back basically and lose him for a second. But watch how he does that and pulls it off very well. He quickly turns around and is able to close up that window and not allow the receiver to get open. And I think the downside is that if he did a double move right there, Bradberry could have gotten turned around and could have gotten burned pretty badly. But keep in mind, there's also another Carolina Panther who is deep, who at this point, it would have been okay if that happened. He wouldn't have been completely wide open. So Bradberry was okay in that situation. And at this point, Goff actually does have a Ram who's more open underneath. He just doesn't realize it, and he tries to throw it anyways to where Bradberry was. Bradberry almost intercepts it. So, that's what he can do. He understands situational football. Certain plays might not look like they're great plays at first, but that's because it's a certain situation where he knows he has a safety deep, so he knows he can afford to turn around like that. Whereas if he didn't have a safety deep, if it was cover 2, he probably couldn't do something like that. So he probably wouldn't do something like that. We always like to talk about, especially, here on a channel like this, we always like to talk about the mental game. We like to talk about who is smarter because I think that's interesting. I think that, yes, seeing people that are physically gifted is obviously very fun, but the strategy of the game is, I think, what makes it so great, in my opinion. I mean, I don't watch most of the Olympic sports. I don't really watch people run to 100. Maybe I will on occasion, but I'm not really that into it. Even though, I mean, those are the best athletes in the world, I don't really care because all you're doing is running. I like sports like this where there's, obviously that physical part of it, but also some strategy. I find that interesting, and Bradberry is a great strategist. Like, take a look at this play. What's going to happen is that he's going up against Tampa Bay. This is cover 3 zone. It's the first play of the game. So, Tampa Bay, they're just thinking, okay, well, we know Carolina runs a lot of cover 3 zones, so maybe we'll do something like this, having Mike Evans run that route right there. It'll get into a gap in coverage. He can get underneath Bradberry, can get open. This makes a lot of sense. And so after the ball is snapped, you're going to notice that it absolutely looks like Mike Evans is open. I mean, Winston certainly thinks Mike Evans is open. He's going to throw it in that direction. But Bradberry knows what he's doing right here. Bradberry knows exactly how far away he can stay from Evans to where he can still run in and try to make this catch. It looks like it's pretty far away, but if you notice, and again, I know it's a little bit hard to tell because it's a little bit smaller, but his right knee is bent right here. Not in a way of he just happens to be running and so his knee is bent, but I mean, he's leaning back and ready to basically just pounce in the second that Winston throws in that direction because he doesn't want to cover up Mike Evans here. He wants Winston to make this throw because he knows that, yes, covering up Evans is good. I mean, taking away a number 1 receiver has a lot of value, but nowhere near enough as much value as an interception. And watch how he does jump in front of it and get that pick. He just totally baited Jameis Winston into an interception like that because he knew the way that Tampa Bay would probably attack Carolina. He knew that. And so, this was the second time they played each other, so maybe that factored in a little bit. But at the same time, good thinking ahead of not just what do they like to run, but what do they like to run against us, and how can we counteract that? Some smart strategy there by Bradberry, and of course, it helps that he just has the talent to pull that kind of thing off. Not a lot of guys do, but he does. And this plays another example. I've talked a lot about his high football IQ, and for good reason, but I also want to talk a lot about just what he can do in terms of just skill set. How talented of a guy is he? Because at the end of the day, I could be the smartest football person in the world. I'm never going to be a professional athlete. You have to be an athlete, too, to be able to perform well, and he absolutely is. This is an example of it. It's going to be a cover 3 zone. And what LA is going to do is they're going to have their number 2 receiver run deep towards the middle of the field. That'll push the safety back. As now they can have another receiver run that route right there. He gets underneath where the safety is. And the idea is that Bradberry, who is in charge of covering the zone on the top left-hand corner of the screen, will be more towards the sideline than the receiver is. There will be some separation, and Goff can make this throw. It's a good concept, especially against a cover 3 zone. And after the ball is snapped, it starts off working out pretty well. I mean, actually, one thing is that, Goff, he should probably just abandon what the play is actually supposed to do and just throw it to the receiver running deep, since the safety is probably staying too far deep. So, again, now the second time I've criticized Goff for a poor post-snap read. We get it. He's not the best at those kind of things. He's still going to go with the original play design, which is hit the receiver he was trying to hit over there that Bradberry is covering. And you notice that there is some separation. I mean, this play worked out well. This is what's supposed to happen. So sure, you could argue Goff should have thrown it deep instead, but if he didn't see that, then it still makes sense to make this throw. This is a fine throw to make. But look at how well Bradberry is able to close. He just runs in, is able to dive and get the interception. I mean, that's so difficult to do. That is not an easy play to make whatsoever. Way more often than not, those are completions. I feel like 9 out of 10 times when you see something like that, it's a completion, and usually the other time is just an incompletion, not an interception. But Bradberry turns those like, okay, we have a great play design, this is working out, into an interception, which is just a devastating blow for an offense. When you have a play that you think is good, you have a player who you think is open, but he just pulls out some magic and gets the interception. And that's what he can do for the Giants. I mean, I like a lot of the pieces that the Giants have on defense and on offense. I think they might have their core ready or close to ready. The problem is they're going to have to work on depth. I think, that's just my opinion, but we'll have to see. I mean, new head coach. It'll be interesting to see how things work out, but that's just my opinion. I'd like to know what you guys think. What do you think of the Bradberry signing? And of course, as always, thanks for watching.